Hello everybody, good evening. Welcome to tonight's webinar on the Old Park Road N13 to Pymmes Park walking and cycling route. My name's Liz Rhodes. I am the Journeys and Places Communications and Engagement Lead, and I am joined by some colleagues who will introduce themselves throughout the webinar tonight. It's just gone 1 minute past 6 and I can see we've got a number of people with us tonight, so thanks again for joining. And we'll get started. Next slide, please. So tonight's agenda, we're starting off with this welcome, and I'm going to cover some housekeeping points in a moment. Then I'm going to speak a little bit about the Journeys and Places program and give a bit of context to the program that's looking to deliver this project. Then I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Dimitra, who is the project manager for this walking and cycling route. I'm going to talk a little bit about communications and engagement for the project. And then Dimitra is going to cover key next steps before we go to questions at the end. Next slide, please. So a few housekeeping points just for tonight's webinar. Thanks again for joining. You should see in the top toolbar of your screen a Q&A function. So please use that tonight to ask any questions that you've got about the project. We'll be answering them in the Q&A section at the end of the presentation. If you could please post your questions just one by one, that will help me facilitate that session at the end. So we're not having too many paragraphs to wade through, and we won't be responding to any comments as such, but we will take note of them and make sure that they're captured by the project team. We also will be reviewing the frequently asked questions that are on the project page based on tonight's questions. So yeah, any that aren't covered there, please feel free to ask tonight. We're recording this webinar and we'll be posting the link to watch the recording later on the project page, and you can see the link there on your screen. We've also got the engagement period open at the moment. So this is your opportunity to have a look at what we're proposing and share your ideas, issues and comments on this online map, which is really about collecting those early comments to inform the design of the project. We're at a very early stage for this project, so really we've got a potential route that we might look at delivering, but Dimitra will talk a bit more about that later. So that map is open until this Sunday, the 11th I think that's meant to be the 18th of June. Apologies for that. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to speak a bit about the Journeys and Places program. We were formerly known as the Healthy Streets program. We're still working towards healthy streets as a concept and the healthy streets indicators that are recognised also by Transport for London. So the program exists really to address these points that are on your screen now. The council a number of years ago made a commitment to addressing the climate emergency. We've also got issues of air quality across Enfield, and obviously that's a London-wide issue. Looking at increasing daily physical activity levels, particularly amongst children, but also adults and everybody in the borough. Looking at how transport impacts social equity and inclusion. So looking at how we can ensure it's accessible for everybody and can benefit everybody as well. We've got a high number of motor miles travelled across the borough, so obviously that impacts the other points that I've just earlier spoken about, and really just the ethos that streets and roads should be safe for everyone, and our projects all work towards that as a goal. Next slide, please. So we have 4 key areas of work for the program, as we like to think about it. The first is delivering a walking and cycling network. So this is where this project falls into, developing safe and accessible routes that people can easily join to walk, cycle, scoot, wheel, however they'd like to travel in the borough. And we are looking at joining them up so that they're connecting key places across the borough, as well as along some of our major routes. Next slide, please. We also look at enhancing town centres in the public realm. An example of this is the Enfield Town project that we've been working on over the last couple of years. So looking at public spaces and revitalising them, how we can enhance high streets and bring, local business to fruition and enhancing nightlife in town centres. But again, looking at road safety, how people travel to, from and around these town centres and public spaces, looking at introducing greenery, seating, and making it a place for everybody. Next slide, please. So we also work to make neighbourhoods safer for all road users. This includes projects such as our School Streets program, as well as cycle parking for residents, parklets and other initiatives. So we've been delivering initiatives around schools for the past few years. I'm sure many of you have heard about them. These include temporary road closures around schools. We also have our quieter neighbourhoods work in the Fox Lane and the Bowes primary areas. So looking at encouraging more people to walk and cycle and reducing those short journeys made by cars each day. Next slide, please. And finally, we have the informing and inspiring about active travel pillar. So this includes our service delivery. We have free services for residents, including cycle training for adults and schools, families. We've also got our free doctor bike repair service, which is really popular across the borough, and that runs at a number of locations each month. And we also have the All Ability Cycling Hub that's held in Bush Hill Park and a range of community events, particularly held across the summer. But we also try and provide really informative and inspiring messaging about walking, wheeling and cycling, and showcasing people of Enfield that it can be for many of us who are able to. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pass over to Dimitra, who's going to speak more about the project. Dimitra, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Great.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry. Hi, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. I'm Dimitra Kosmidou. I'm the project manager delivering the Old Park Road N13 to Pymmes Park walking and cycling route. Actually, I'm very excited that we are delivering this type of projects to encourage more people to walk and cycle, to provide safer travel and sustainable options when it comes to how we are moving around the borough. Here we will start by looking all the project objectives. The first objective is to link the existing Fox Lane area quieter neighborhood with existing cycleways, including Cycleway 20, Cycleway 21 and Cycleway 1. Our second objective is to review the existing facilities along this route against the latest design standards. And our third objective is to contribute towards a long-term increase levels of active travel, both along the route and as part of a wider borough network. As Liz said at the beginning, the project is at a very early stage and no designs have been developed yet. However, you are welcome to share your ideas and issues with us via the interactive map, which can be found under the project page for the Old Park Road N13 to Pymmes Park Walking and Cycling project. The map will be open until the 18th of June, as Liz said earlier, and the suggestions of the design of the scheme, any issues that face people walking and cycling in the area will be addressed and will be through this stage and can be incorporated into the future designs. The development of the designs as well as the delivery of the project is subject to further funding. Okay. Here we can see some key areas. On this slide, we can see some key areas. Here we have the Fox Lane area quieter neighborhood. We have Fierce Farm wetlands, and we have the Pymmes Park on this side. We can also see the main cycleways which we want this project to connect to, which is the Cycleway 20, Cycleway 21, and Cycleway 1. As I mentioned at the beginning, this project is at a very, very early stage, and therefore we don't know yet the exact route alignment. Here on the dashed line, you can see a potential route which will extend from Old Park Road, run through Fox Lane area quieter neighborhood, connect with Cycleway 20 at Green Lanes here, run through Fierce Farm wetlands. Here can be connected with Cycleway 21 at Northern Avenue at its junction with Dunholm Road, and at this part can be connected with Cycleway 1 at Sweetbriar Walk at its junction with Delton Road. We also have the opportunity to connect our proposed our potential walking and cycle project with other proposed projects like this one, which is the new Southgate Station to Palmer's Green Station walking and cycling route project, and this one here that you can see, which is the Southgate Circus to Great Cambridge Junction walking and cycling route project. On this slide, we can see the locations of existing crossing points and existing shared walking and cycling paths. We have some existing crossing points at Green Lanes, which the potential route could be connected with the Cycleway 20, at Fierce Lane here, and at Great Cambridge Road here. These are existing crossing points. We also have some existing facilities and some shared walking and cycling paths which can be found within the Fierce Farm wetlands and at this area of the end of the Barwell Green. Traffic surveys have been undertaken along the whole potential route, and the results will be reviewed for further proposals. Reviewing the speed and the volume of the motor traffic will help us to identify what interventions are needed for all of these circled areas, and will help us to finalize the route. So we will be able to review all the options on the Stonard Road for the Bourne crossing point, for the Hazelbury Road, for all these crossing points, and we will be able to review all the existing facilities and as I said, to finalize the cycle route. Currently, the early engagement to the potential route is open, and as we said, you are welcome to share your ideas and the issues with us via the interactive map. And once the early engagement will close, We will produce the early engagement report. So having your ideas, having the ideas, the issues and the suggestion that people will add on the map, along with the traffic survey data, we will be able to review all the facilities, the existing ones, and we will be able to provide some new options as well. On this slide, we can see some of the possible design features, which are the rain gardens, wayfinding features, quite mixed traffic streets, segregated cycle track, and some crossing points. The rain gardens, which can be found here, you can see them here, are areas of planting that collect stormwater from the streets and sidewalks. They are designed to mimic the natural way water flows over and absorbs into land to reduce stormwater pollution. Some other design features that we have are the wayfinding that you can see here. We have wayfinding signs like this one that it's on the top of this bollard, or also we have wayfinding road markings like this one here. These wayfinding features can be installed to help riders to navigate throughout their journey and to make them feel safer. Next, we have some other potential designs like the quite mixed traffic streets and the segregated cycle track. Both of the examples can be seen here. The quite mixed traffic streets can be implemented mainly where the traffic is quieter. It is a less expensive option and have less impact on the area. The option would require minimal changes such as adding wayfinding signs and minor upgrades to the carriageway. However, in the roads where the traffic is high or where safety is a concern, there is a segregated cycle lane option, which is this one here. And this option will separate cyclists from motor vehicles and will create a safer and protected cycle lane. Following this option would mean that the existing road would require a higher level of modification. And last, we have the crossing points, which you can see here on this photo. These crossing points enable a safe road crossing for individuals walking, wheeling, and cycling. There are already some crossing points along this route, as I mentioned on the previous slides, and are going to be reviewed against the latest design standards in order to make them safer for crossing. All these options that you can see here are possible design features which will be considered after the review of the traffic survey and the review of the ideas and the issues that will be provided on the interactive map or via emails during the early engagement period. Thank you, and now we'll hand it over to Liz, who is going to discuss the communication and engagement.
Great, thank you. Perfect. So we have a project page for this project at that link that you can see there. That's hosted on the Let's Talk Enfield website. Many of you may have already been onto that page and read the information and seen the map, maybe even participated in that engagement exercise as well. So like we've said earlier, that's open until this Sunday, the 18th of June. Just to reiterate, so the engagement at the moment is about collecting ideas for walking and cycling along this proposed route, and any issues that you might see that could, be related to walking and cycling along this particular area. We're not proposing any particular design at this point for comment, that would come later on once we have that. We also undertake stakeholder engagement with Transport for London and regularly meet with the emergency services. And as we've said, the project is subject to further funding and approvals. So we will be posting project updates, any designs that are developed for this project on the project page, and other updates for the project, as well as hosting any statutory consultation on a draft traffic order that might come forward for the project. Next slide, please. So this is an image of the online map that's hosted on the project page, and you can see here we've already received some pins along this proposed route. The green ones are ideas and the red ones are issues, and you can leave a comment giving a bit more information about what you're putting your pin down for. Next slide, please. So this page hosts a range of information, as I've briefly mentioned. So it has information on the project itself, frequently asked questions, key dates for the project, information on any engagement activities such as this webinar. It hosts the map for comments. It will in the future potentially host notices of the traffic orders and any statutory consultation as well, and project updates. Next slide, please. So I'm going to hand back to Dimitra, who's going to cover next steps.
Thank you, Liz. So here we can see the next steps. Following the engagement that closing on the 18th of June, we will analyze the information provided. So the analysis will help us in future once the funding will be received to develop the designs. And also, we have here that the development of the designs as well as the construction of the cycleway is subject to funding. So the dates for these activities are listed as to be confirmed. And now we are in the Q&A section. Here we can see.
Awesome, thank you. So I can see a number of questions have come through the Q&A function. I'm going to try to get to as many as I can, if not all of them tonight. So please keep publishing or posting any questions that you've got about this project. Like I've said at the start of the webinar, we'll be updating the frequently asked questions section of the project page after this with the questions that were asked tonight. So anything that's not on there at the moment that comes through tonight, we can capture on there. All right, so why does the consultation document not give specific information about whether there'll be restrictions on motor vehicle access on the affected roads? Dimitra, I know you've spoken a bit to this already, but do you want to cover, you know, the process of the design and
Yes.
any particular plans?
Yes, sure. As we said that we are at the very, very early stages. So currently at this time, we have only an idea of a potential route. So collecting any ideas, any issues, then we will be able to have some options and finalizing the actually the cycleway route. So we are at the really early stages now.
So is it fair to say that there aren't any proposals at the moment for where, if any, cycle lane would be introduced along the proposed route?
No, we currently don't know exactly what the designs will be. No.
Yeah, so at the moment we just have the proposed route for where
Exactly.
we may look to introduce various interventions, which Dimitra covered in that earlier slide with the 6 images. There's a number of questions,
Exactly.
I think, asking similar things to that, so I just want to clarify that. There are some questions around Lytton Avenue. Petros, not sure if you want to come in on this, which is a cul-de-sac. There needs to be a turning circle. Do you have any comments on that?
Yes, so as we mentioned earlier, this is just an indicative, to start with, an indicative route, so we don't actually know whether Lytton Avenue will be part of it or not. Now, in terms of Lytton Avenue in particular, it's a quiet road by default because it is a dead end, it is a cul-de-sac, and therefore it's not, it will not need segregated facilities because there's just not a high amount of traffic to justify such a thing. So in cases like that, like Lytton Avenue, the only really thing we would do is add some cycle logos on the pavement, on the road, I mean on the carriageway pavement, and also add some wayfinding signs. And I'm aware that Avondale Road and Lytton Avenue have some of that, so really all we would do is actually review whether these are sort of enough to guide cyclists through those roads. If these roads, again, to repeat, if they are part of their route. So at this stage, we don't actually know that.
Okay, thank you. There's also a question around Stonard Road where we've previously had a modal filter in place. Why are you proposing to put in a cycle lane at the top of Stonard Road? Petros, do you want to cover that as well?
So again, it sort of goes back to the alignment that we don't know that. Of course, Stonard Road was previously filtered. That filter was removed with the intention to then review sort of the traffic information, review again what the issues are in the area, use, of course, the feedback that we are collecting now through the engagement for this project. And if we actually do need to take the route through Stonard Road, and or if we need to introduce some interventions there, that'll be the next stage. At this point, all we really are doing is collecting all that information that we need in order to allow us to move on to the next stage, which is actually assessing all this information and coming up with, as Dimitra said, a range of options of what we could be doing.
Yeah, okay, cool. We're having trouble sharing Petros's video, so sorry that everybody can't see him. When were the traffic surveys done, and why have they not been published? Dimitra, do you want to answer that one?
Yes, we have done at the early May, was done the surveys. Now it's under the we are waiting for them to be like submitted and finalized from the supplier.
Okay, great. How do we assess a road for cycle lane suitability? Dimitra, do you want to take that one as well?
So can you please repeat?
Yeah. So how do we assess a road for cycle lane suitability, and how would we choose a road for if that were to be the intervention?
In general, there are some standards. There are national standards of cycleway infrastructure design in UK. So we are willing the roads that we are going to have like an option for our route to go based on these standards. So there are some standards we are following in order to choose like a road and have it ready for the cycleway to be there.
And just sorry to interject, but just to add to this, there's because I did see a question also around road safety, so I think it's worth sort of covering this together. So there's many factors. The standards consider a lot of things. Key things to these standards are traffic volumes, speeds, safety. There's also considerations around width of the road and general sort of site constraints. Also, there are things that we're looking around the directness of the route and whether that has the potential to be used. And of course, safety considerations are key, and this is where all this traffic data feeds into. And this is also where we have road safety engineers reviewing everything we do and providing inputs throughout the process. So there's quite a lot of factors when we decide what a route might be, including, of course, I should mention also costs. So there might be some more cost-effective options that are equivalent to some other options that are, of course, less cost-effective. So these things are all part of an assessment before we decide.
Yeah, thanks. I think that answers. There's a question around a pedestrian crossing at the blind corner on Bourne Hill. I'm not sure if we're actually proposing that at all, are we?
There is like a crossing point on Bourne Hill, which is somewhere out here, and we can review like the options. Yeah, because I have seen many pins about this blind corner here, and we can review some options to make this crossing point like safer for the cyclists and the pedestrians.
Great, thank you.
And again, it is a potential route. It is not. It's an indicative. It's not anything that we are certain about. So it might actually not use, for instance, Bourne Hill. It might go through different directions. And I've seen suggestions around using Cycleway 20 along green lanes. So again, part of our assessments will be whether that's a better route.
Yeah,
exactly.
There's a question around the design of some of the existing cycle lanes creating puddles and how we would prevent that in any future design, particularly thinking about pedestrians and their use of those areas, making them hard to cross.
I can take that.
Yeah.
So in general, puddles could be either an issue of design or construction, because it all really relates to the levels of the road and the gradients. But in general, where we find low points, where we find the potential for ponding, we tend to introduce, of course, some drainage interventions. Now, there might be site constraints that again prevent us from doing so. Most of the times, though, these are addressed, and other times we also use rain gardens, by the way, that Dimitra mentioned earlier, as a way to drain the sort of those cycle lanes. Now, it's really sort of location dependent, and sometimes it might just be an issue at construction, especially where there's flat spots and there's a lot of very slight gradients, and that creates sometimes issues at construction, and therefore in the future creates some ponding.
Okay, thank you. There's a few questions about this early engagement period broadly. So we delivered a couple of letters to the area of homes around the route, and that had information on the project as well as this engagement opportunity. People can write to us if they like, and we can capture their ideas and issues and comments in that way, or they can email us as well. So the engagement report that follows this period of engagement will be published on the project page in due course, when we've been able to capture all of the ideas and issues that have come through the map, email and letter, and do some analysis about what those themes are and any particular locations that have stood out as well. So should this project progress with further funding and approvals, it may move to, you know, a moment in time where there's a draft traffic order for whatever interventions are being introduced as part of the project. And anytime we produce a draft traffic order or publish a draft traffic order, we must run a statutory consultation alongside that. So that's another opportunity to give feedback on this project, and that will be a more formal process of consultation, where if that happens and if the project progresses to that stage, residents will be notified again about that via a letter, and we also publish that and promote it via social media from the council and the Journeys and Places pages. We post it in council newsletters and things like that. If you haven't, I encourage you to sign up to the Journeys and Places newsletter. So that goes out quite regularly and has information on these types of opportunities. Any statutory consultation is also published along with the notice of making of the draft traffic order in the local papers, so the London Gazette as well as the Enfield Independent. So that's the statutory process should we get there. Just going through the questions again, there's a few more similar on the consultation. Will there be any improvements to pavements and footways, Dimitra?
Yes, we are. Yes, we are looking all the existing facilities against the design standards. So yes, in order to make this route safer, there will be some. We will make this like the changes on the pavements as well.
Awesome. Question around few cyclists use the existing green lane cycleway. What evidence is there that cyclists want to use this new route? I suppose, this kind of goes back to my earlier part of the presentation where it talks about the program. So we're looking to develop a network of walking and cycling facilities. That's not always cycle lanes like we've mentioned tonight. It could be through wayfinding and other types of routes. But we do collect cycle counts along green lanes, and we publish them on our website. So you can see those on the Journeys and Places website. So we have some evidence from that, but also really our approach is to introduce the infrastructure, and that alone does have as evidence to show that people are encouraged to cycle more if they have the ability to do that easily and safely, and it's local to them. Petros, did you want to come in, or Dimitra, further to that about this particular route, perhaps?
Well, it's the one thing we need also to point out is that this is a national sort of national drive to introduce further such infrastructure in order to enable more people to use sustainable means of transport. As an isolated project, of course, it will lead to some increase, but this is about creating a network. And this is also sort of creating basically a cohesive network that has more than just routes. So there's things around cycle parking, there's things around sort of cycle training and other things we do as part of the Journeys and Places program. And it's generally around making it easier and safer for people to use such means of transport. So it's very difficult, of course, to quantify this with certainty as to what that increase might look like. But this is where monitoring fits into this, and we understand from what we see whether our sort of measures that we introduce, how effective they are, and what we can do to make them better going forward.
Cool, thank you.
And I wanted to add that yes, we are trying to build the network where we will connect one route to another, and we will connect this with some key destinations and some proposed routes that we already mentioned on the previous slides. Thank you.
Cool. Dimitra, back to an earlier question around traffic monitoring. How long did you monitor the traffic over the proposed route?
we did it like for 7 days as the traffic service scope was proposed to do this. We did pedestrian, curbside, and traffic surveys.
Great, thank you. Just going through to see if there's anything we haven't yet covered. Will you be taking out parking on Old Park Road? Will you do anything to stop so many vehicles on this road overhanging the pavement? Dimitra?
Sorry, was the question if we are removing any parking?
That's right, yeah.
Oh, yeah. In general, our main objective is to use like the option of the quite mixed traffic cycle lanes. So Old Park Road is a road with low volume of traffic. So for this kind of roads, we will implement some wayfinding marking or signs. But again, we need to check as we are saying the traffic volumes and the speeds mainly.
Yeah. And there's a question around risk to mature trees on the proposed route. Do you know if there'd be any plans to potentially remove those mature trees?
We at this stage is very early to say something like this. We are planning to have as less interventions as we can. So currently we don't have like some options to do something like this.
Mm-hmm. And who is funding this project at the moment?
Yeah. We are in these initial stages. We are in the initiation and the exploration stages. So these are funded by Transport for London under the Cycle Network Development Programme.
Great, thank you. Just having a look through these questions, sorry. So we've talked a bit about safety and the process of design. So we haven't proposed anything yet and not a cycle lane yet. However, not to say that we may not, not to say that we won't on any part of the route. But yeah, like we don't know. So this period of engagement is really that early stage. We're only at what we call an initiation stage that Dimitra just mentioned of the project. So collecting early views that can inform the design, and then we'll come back to you with that design to present for your comments and feedback then. Okay. Team, any other questions that you can see? Do we know how much it's going to cost, Dimitra? If we were to implement this?
No, at that stage, no, it is very early.
Okay. But I'm sure we would get that information. If the project progresses, we would be costing it as well.
Of course, yeah. It depends on the options that we're going to implement and provide.
So question around publication in local newspapers. So again, at the statutory consultation phase, it's a requirement, a legal requirement that we publish the notice of the draft traffic order in the local newspapers. So that's our statutory obligation. And in terms of our newsletter, we have good engagement with the Journeys and Places newsletter, and there are a number of other council newsletters. For ours, we've got over 11,000 subscribers, so that's been going out monthly, and we're about to increase that out to the subscriber base fortnightly. So there'll be more news coming from us and more information about what's happening and ways that you can get involved in these types of projects. Okay, I don't think we've got any new questions that I can see. And we are coming to the end of our time. So does the team have any final comments they'd like to make before we close?
Just to note that because there was a comment around us, so whether we had firm plans and how our responses may give the impression that we have some plans. The only thing that we mentioned is that certain roads we know, because we just say Lytton Avenue is a dead end, so we know by default that the traffic there will be very low, and therefore we know that if Lytton Avenue was part of the route, it wouldn't need segregated cycle lanes. But we, at this point, we have virtually no route, no design, and none of that. We are very early. We are just trying to collect all the information we will need in order to do that as at the next stage. So it's just that we do know about, of course, we understand the area, we understand the site, and we understand that if some roads were part of this, because of how they, because of, for instance, you know, either they are very small roads or they have very low traffic, then they wouldn't need some sort of major intervention. But that doesn't mean we actually have a design.
Okay. Great. Well, lots of questions tonight. We'll be going through those and making sure that we've captured all of those and updated the frequently asked questions on the project page. But I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and joining on your Wednesday sunny evening, and have a good night, and I'll close the webinar there.
Thank you.